All right, so we are in this room, and we are abolitionists, and we, for the reasons Russell described and others have described, we're very careful and very intentional about calling ourselves abolitionists. And when we do that, we're not, playing this cheap trick where it's like, oh, the people who abolished slavery were really cool, and we're trying to kind of just piggyback off of the fact that everyone likes them, and then people will like us if we call ourselves anything. That's not what we're doing. We pattern what we do after what they did. We try to pattern what we say and the arguments we make after what they said and the arguments that they make. And so I'm up here to talk about the other pro-life bills here in the state of Oklahoma, and I want to frame that discussion by first starting off with a quote from William Lloyd Garrison, who is one of the, Russell's already mentioned him, one of the leading abolitionists of slavery, and something that he wrote and then spoke at a meeting, at an anti-slavery society meeting. He said, "We regard as delusive, cruel, and dangerous any scheme of expatriation which pretends to aid, either directly or indirectly, in the emancipation of the slaves, or to be a substitute for the immediate and total abolition of slavery." That's pretty strong. That's territory. I almost don't even feel comfortable saying that about the pro-life bills I'm going to be talking about, right? I'm trying to argue that they're not good. Garrison is saying these attempts that these middle-of-the-road anti-slavery people are making to incrementally do away with this, it's not that they're just not as good as total and immediate abolition. They're cruel, delusive, and dangerous. And I'm going to address those bills, and I'm going to explain why that is. This is from the Declaration of Sentiments, 1833. So, one pro-life bill that we have here in Oklahoma is Senate Bill 1859. Now, this is a bill, the heartbeat bill is something that's very popular in pro-life circles that's being introduced in states all over the country. And so here's a quote from this bill. It says, "No physician shall perform an abortion if the physician determines the embryonic or fetal heartbeat is audible, or if fetal brainwaves are detected." So this is kind of a heartbeat bill plus the added brainwave aspect. So, as abolitionists and even pro-lifers, we say abortion is wrong. And when you say something is wrong, what do you need to have in order to say something is wrong? You need a standard of right and a standard of wrong. Our standard is God's word. And so when you have a bill here that's saying one thing, it says you shall not perform an abortion if there's a heartbeat or if there are brainwaves. Are you writing a bill that's in agreement with God's word? God's word says you shall not murder. This bill says you shall not murder if the abortionist determines that there is a heartbeat or there are brainwaves. Now, this is dumb for a number of reasons. Sarah Cleveland is in the room, and she's said in documentaries and in testimonies, she's an ultrasound ultrasound tech, and she's displayed how easy it is to mess with the ultrasound and say, oh, I guess I just pointed this the wrong way, and I don't see the heartbeat, I don't see the brainwaves. That's very, very easy, and so there's all these other problems with it. But the foundational problem is that we have a bill that's in disagreement with God's word. So not only is it in disagreement with that, it's in disagreement with the United States Constitution. The United States Constitution says that everyone gets the right to life. Everyone gets the right to equal protection of the laws. Is this bill in agreement with that? No, this bill says you get the right to life and equal protection if the person who's been hired to murder you is honest about the fact that they did not see your heartbeat or brainwaves. And so we've got a bill that's in disagreement with God's word, it's in disagreement with the United States Constitution. And these are the foundations of our argument, and we're leaving them on the sidelines when we compromise with bills like this one. And there are other problems I could get into, but those are the foundational problems with this bill. Another one we have in Oklahoma, House Bill 2900. So this bill here, what you see on the screen, is Oklahoma homicide statutes. So homicide is the killing of one human being by another. As used in the section, human being includes an unborn child, as defined in section 1730 of Title 63 of Oklahoma statutes. That's pretty interesting. But then part C here is where it goes off the rails. you can actually murder the unborn child as long as it's done in a legal abortion. So what 2900 does is it gets rid of that Part C, which actually is a good thing. So that Part C there needs to be gotten rid of. The problem with this bill is that there are a bunch of other places in our statutes where things like this Part C need to be gotten rid of. And so this 2900, it's like 2% of what SB 13 is. Because SB 13 gets rid of this Part C and everywhere else in the codes that allow for abortion. And it explicitly says abortion is murder and human beings get equal protection of the laws. It explicitly says that Roe is wrong and that it shall be considered null and void in the state of Oklahoma. And so what 2900 does, it does one little thing that does need to be done, but it's like I said, it's like 2% of what needs to be done. And so it's not accomplishing what it needs to accomplish. So let's move on to the next bill here. This is Senate Bill 1721. Now, this bill, well, I'll just get into reading. It starts off really, really good. So, this section shall be known and may be cited as the Unborn Person Equality Act. The Oklahoma legislature finds that the life of each human being begins at conception. Unborn persons have protectable interests in life, health, and well-being, and the natural parents of unborn persons have protectable interests in the life, health, and well-being of their unborn child. This is not bad here, but let's move on here. Here is Part C. Oh, and actually, this part here is also good. Consistent with Amendments 5 and 14 of the United States Constitution and pursuant to the powers reserved to this state by Amendment 10 of the United States Constitution, the laws of this state shall be interpreted and construed to acknowledge on behalf of the unborn person at every stage of development all the rights, privileges, and immunities available to other persons, citizens, and residents of this state, subject only to the Constitution of the United States. Again, great. This bill is really, this is good stuff so far. Now, watch what happens when I push this next button. And so subject only to the Constitution and decisional interpretations thereof by the United States Supreme Court. What is that about? Where else in our codes do we say, here's what we're going to say is the law, but only if the Supreme Court says that this is the law? Right, and so essentially, so it says Amendments 5 and 14 guarantee the rights to life and equal protection. Great. Only if the Supreme Court says that Amendments 5 and 14 give the right to life and equal protection. And this is, even better, the Amendment 10 part. It's saying, Amendment 10, state sovereignty. We're standing up to the Supreme Court. We are asserting our 10th Amendment rights to determine our own laws in the state of Oklahoma, if the Supreme Court allows us to, right? We're standing up against the federal government, subject to the approval of the federal government. It's nonsense. This is such nonsense. But this is, again, Russell talked about this ultimate subservience to the Supreme Court that is so ingrained in the minds of so many pro-life politicians and pro-life lobbyists, and it trickles down to your rank and file pro-life people as well. And it just comes back to, again, others have touched on this. The Supreme Court is wrong. They are wrong egregiously. The Supreme Court is saying that murder, child sacrifice, must be legal in every state, including Oklahoma. They're wrong. And when we're ordered to allow mass murder in our state, we're supposed to say, no. God said, you shall not murder. Amendments 5 and 14 guarantee the rights to life and equal protection. No, we are not allowing mass murder. But this here could be just a defining sentence of the pro-life movement, and this is what it's about for them. And it's just a really, really warped way of, it displays a warped theology, it displays a warped understanding of the Constitution, and it's just really sad to see stuff like this. Another bill, the Unborn Person Wrongful Death Act. So there's not a quote that I'll take from it, but I'll just give you the gist of it. Basically, this says that if a regulation was broken during the performing of the abortion, say if the abortionist forces the mother into it, or if the abortionist fails to get the adequate signatures and paperwork, or if some mistake was made on the part of the abortionist, then the mother or the grandparents can sue the abortionist. Again, this is a really silly bill. This is kind of what Russell was talking about. There's taking the axe to the root, there's shearing off the branches, and then there's just like random shrubs that's like, what are we even doing here? This is like a random shrub. The mother paid the abortionist to murder her child. Why is our strategy for fighting abortion to give her the right to sue the person who she was paying to do this awful, awful thing? It's just a really, really silly way of trying to fight what we're trying to fight. And again, just a warped, and they do stuff like this, again, because they think we have to submit to the Supreme Court. We can't abolish, we can't pass Senate Bill 13, we can't do it. And so we have to do just ridiculous stuff like this. And yeah, it's really, really sad. So here is the bill of the hour. This passed yesterday. This is House Bill 1182, and the Senate version is 1786. As Russell will address, this takes away the medical license from a doctor with a license who performs an abortion. Now, as Russell talked about, abortion is still legal if this bill passes and goes into effect, because you can just perform your own abortion, right? And that's an industry that's really growing. There are places you can go, websites you can go to, where you fill out a form and they send abortion pills to your door, right? That's where the industry is going, and this does nothing about that. You can still perform your own abortion, you just can't have a licensed professional do it for you. So it doesn't actually do anything about abortion. But what it does do is it says that abortion is unprofessional conduct, and therefore, if a licensed physician does this, they lose their license. Unprofessional conduct is a bit of an understatement here, right? We're talking about the murder of a human being. But again, they say we can't call it murder. We can't abolish it. We can't establish justice, again, because we have to submit to the Supreme Court. And that's the faulty thinking. And yeah, again, this bill, if you read the articles, there was a quote from the leader of Oklahoma Baptists, Blake Gideon, and he was touting this as a bill that's consistent. Pastor Askell addressed the resolution that was passed by Oklahoma Baptists, saying, "We demand the immediate end of abortion, no compromise, no exception." Blake Gideon is championing this bill as something that lives up to that. Abortion's abolished, no compromise, no exception. It doesn't even say abortion's illegal. It just says that a licensed physician can't do it. Abortion's still perfectly legal. A number of other ways you can do it. And again, they do it because they think they have to submit to the Supreme Court, and so you've got to pass silliness like this. Going back to the Garrison quote that I started with, you could argue that these bills are cruel. They fail to establish justice. They fail to actually abolish abortion. Another reason they're cruel and delusive, and why I'm perfectly comfortable calling them that, is because the reason this bill was passed, it was the first bill passed in the session. The legislative session started on Monday. They rushed this thing to the floor. It already passed. The reason they passed that bill so quickly is because of this meeting right here. It's because of what happened, is what's going to happen on Tuesday, when there are going to be thousands of people at the Capitol. They wanted to try to cut our legs up from underneath us and say, look, we already did our pro-life thing for the years. We've already done it. That's what they want this bill to be. They want to point to something and say, look, we've already done what we need to do. That's what they're trying to do. That's why they passed this bill so quickly. And that's why it's delusive. They want to pass that as the substitute for SB 13 because they don't want to actually do something hard that's the right thing to do. And so again, Garrison was harsh, and me quoting Garrison is very harsh when we call these bills cruel and delusive. But that is what they are. I think we're going to move on next to a section of Q&A. And so if you have questions, if you want to address anything about that, why we think it's appropriate to call it cruel and delusive, feel free to ask. But anyways, I think we'll move on to Q&A.